This is Tracy V. Wilson from Stuff You Missed in History Class. Toyota is the best resale value brand for 2024, according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. So choose a Toyota and get the confidence that your vehicle will retain its value year after year, ride after ride. And check out the all-new 25 Camry or test drive a stylish and affordable Corolla. Find out more at buyatoyota.com. Vehicles' projected resale value is specific to the 2024 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Kelley Blue Book is a registered trademark of Kelley Blue Book Company, Inc. Toyota, let's go places.
This is Dr. Joy Harden-Radford from Therapy for Black Girls. Reading books gives you feelings. I mean, that's what they do. And with millions of books on Amazon, there's a reading feeling for everyone. Like there's an awestruck, whoa, feeling you get when you read about a dragon flying across the sky. But that's different from the surprised, whoa, you get when you read that the best friend did it. And that's totally different than the hubba hubba, whoa, when the stable boy becomes a stable man. And Amazon's got all the woes. Amazon Books, that reading feeling awaits.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode in which we spend so much time talking about punk, hardcore, metal, emo, indie rock, as long as it is of the DIY variety. That is what we care about here, and that's what you care about. That's why you're listening to this thing. That's why you tripped across this show, whatever, a year ago, last week, whatever it is. You are welcome here, and you are welcome to spread the word as you see fit, even if it's just sharing stuff on social media. Helps out tremendously. But this week's episode is a little bit different because it's a little bit shorter. But for one, that's because I'm actually in the United Kingdom right now, so I'm traveling. It's tough to maintain all the release schedules, all that sort of stuff. But regardless, I have a very, what I'd like to think is insightful and interesting conversation with my good friend Joey Cahill, the proprietor of Wanna Hear It Records. And he is a deep nerd about this stuff like I am. And that's why we became friends initially. And then I realized I liked him as a human being. And, it just goes on and on. But the question we are trying to ask, or trying to answer, because I ask it successfully, is why is hardcore so popular right now? Which, of course, we will not answer succinctly because clearly there's a multitude of reasons. But it's a question that's been really just sitting in my brain for the past, I would say, year and a half or so. But I noticed the tide changing, as it were, probably 3 or 4 years ago, where it just started to seem like shows got bigger. There were more people interested in the genre. It didn't seem as I don't know, when I'm just interacting with civilians. I'll give you a very real world example. I work at a very large company in the podcast space that is owned by one of the largest companies in the entire planet. And anyways, they're just laying that groundwork. I had a friend who I work with, run-of-the-mill human, great dude, love hanging out with him. But he came up to me one day and he was like, "Hey, have you heard of this band called Knocked Loose?" And this was shortly after they released a single off the new record that was with Poppy. Totally blanking on the song's name now, but regardless, it was, for lack of a better term, a civilian. And I was like, yes, I am familiar with Knocked Loose. And we started to have a discussion about it. And, I was like, oh yeah, you should listen to some of the interviews that I've done with members of the band on this very podcast that I host. And so anyways, we started talking about that, but that's not the, inciting incident, so to speak, but it's just something that I think is worth having a dialogue about and worth having theories on. And there, again, we're not going to arrive at a conclusion. There's a multitude of reasons why this is happening, but to kind of put it out there to the ether is why I wanted to record this conversation and have it with my friend Joey, where we could kind of theorize, bounce some stuff around, and then hopefully get you thinking about it. Because I do think that when subcultures become more mainstream, more popular, there are many aspects that are lost that all of us hold very dear. But there's so many positive things that come from it. So it's a double-edged sword, like many of these things are. But anyways, I have no bad opinions in regards to the fact that hardcore is really, really popular. But like I said, there's trade-offs. And anyways, we talk a lot about it. And so I'm excited to bring you that conversation. But you can always email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com, or respond to all emails, and, love to hear your thoughts and whatever it is that's on your mind. Love to receive that as a repository for all of those thoughts. You can also leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page. Helps out tremendously. Same thing on Spotify, except it's even easier. You just leave a rating on there. Just tap it on your mobile device, some stars, boom, you're off and running. Let's talk about the weekly recommendation. This is actually an older record, but one that I've been listening to so much recently. And I'm doing this also because my friend on the show, Joey, is a huge fan of this band as well. The record is by a band called Day of Suffering. The record is called The Eternal Jihad, which is a very incisive name of record. But this record came out, I want to say 1997, North Carolina, metalcore, like definitely around the same time as like Prayer for Cleansing and that sort of stuff, and predates Between the Buried and Me. And the North Carolina metalcore scene is very incestuous. A lot of these members did a lot of things, played in a lot of different bands. Day of Suffering has done some reunion shows, like I want to say in the mid 2010s they did. But this is it's a punishing record. And it's one of those things where it's like, even though it's like 8 songs, I want to say, it's not easy to listen to. And usually once I'm done with like the 3rd or 4th song, I'm like, oh, I got to take a break for a moment. But just an absolute smoke show of a record. If you like stuff that is heavy and you've never heard Day of Suffering, please do yourself a favor. It's streaming at all the normal platforms. You're able to easily access it, and it's very worth your while if you care about metalcore, which obviously you probably do if you're listening to the show. So anyways, let's talk to my friend Joey about why is hardcore so popular right now.
Why am I in so much pain this time? Without warning, from skills, I feel nothing and I blame you. No remorse, no shame. God, I hate what's become of me. Betrayer, look me in the eye.
So yes, Mr. Cahill, as a first of all, we're not going to solve the world's problems by answering this question, nor answer this question. But this is something I know that you and I probably spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about compared to normal humans. So in your opinion, Joey, why is hardcore so popular right now?
That is a tough question to answer,
but
I have theories. I think, a few things. I think the biggest answer, honestly, and is way above me or way below me in age, is I think TikTok. I think there's like a TikTok craze that has like taken over. And I think it's putting it in the face of people who have never seen anything like this before.
That's a good, that's a very good topic. We'll as they say in the business world, we'll double click on. Uh-huh. I do think, I completely agree with you. I think that there's especially, I know that we've seen this broadly in other genres, like, Screamo Scrams or whatever, and then like shoegaze, it's like these bands that are like, I'll pick on one in a good way, like a band like Glare, where they're a really good band. I personally have seen them live once. They're good. Like, are they setting the world on fire? No, but they have absolutely, put a stranglehold on people using their music because it's, whatever, inoffensive, like good vibes, whatever. And to your point, like just the ability for people to include music in whatever it is that they're posting, like some bands get just massive hits and you can't really predict.
And it's like, A Day to Remember's arguably, whatever you want to call hardcore band or not, like that's a conversation for another day, but like that disrespect your surroundings, like thing, like it feels like such a gateway, like to what is this? Like, you know, people see that and it's like I've done, you know, that where I jokingly play that and then smash records in the store. It's funny. You know, and like, but you know, so I think it's also a way to, yeah, if you're like, you know, joking around, like post a video of like fighting with your friends and it's like, oh, put on heavy music. And, you know, it just, I think like you never know what's going to take off and like become like, it's not hardcore, but like the fact that Pine Grove became this TikTok sensation is like, what? Wait, what happened? Like,
yeah, it's true. In the same way that like we can look back on different social media eras and the dissemination of music and being able to, I mean, it's the same conversations that I know you and I were having working at record labels, looking at certain bands being like, dude, they're getting like, you know, whatever. I'll be specific and pick out bands where it's like Job for a Cowboy, where you're just like, why do they have like 90, 100 million plays on MySpace? And like, this is crazy. And to exactly your point, where it's just like, you can't tell why certain things hit, but then they hit and then they spread it to people, to your point, who have never been exposed to it.
Well, that's like, you know, there's a list of bands that have like, are like in the midst of it now. And I can kind of like figure out a lot of them, not figure out, but like have an understanding. But then like a band like Speed, who arguably is the most hardcore of like the hardcore bands that are like blowing up. Like, I like Speed. Speed's probably my favorite of this batch of bands. And it's like, they just kind of sound like Trapped Under Ice. Like, why?
Sure.
You know, like, but I mean, it's gluten or something.
No, it's like the ability to articulate what makes something special. Like, you know, you would need, you know, 40 minutes to like speak about why this particular band. But sometimes it's like, when you peel away the layers of why certain bands are able to capture this momentum and attention, where it's like, you know, the kids from Speed have existed in the Australian hardcore scene for, you know, whatever, 15 plus years and played a million.
Members of Relentless, which was a 613 on our band. So, you know, you're welcome, world.
Exactly. The only reason that Speed exists is, you know, Relentless crawled so Speed could run.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly like the idea of like being around something long enough. It doesn't make it inevitable that you will find some level of success, but it for sure doesn't hurt, because then when you are, you know, in that spotlight, you are ready. And that's why Speed, you know, I still remember like when I interviewed Jem for the Outbreak podcast last year, I was talking to him and he was like, he spoke of the fact that this was like their 25th show or something like that, you know, something like, and I'm like, that is so hilarious to think about, that a band could be able to exist in such a short period of time and be so good live only because they played in a million bands and existed around that. So, yeah.
And kind of like, I mean, to bands, not, I mean, it's not really like they guess they weren't other bands, but a band like, I think a big reason also for where we are today is, you know, like a band like Turnstile, who is this like, you know, there came 100% from hardcore and just kept at it. And, you know, Glow On just became this like crossover, like everyone liked it. But it's like, you know, their first big tour, they bring Ceremony, who was that band? Not Combust. Why can't I think of the band? I don't know.
But, so someone will correct us. It's okay.
Yeah. But it was like Ceremony, Citizen, a band I can't think of, and then like Truth Cult. So it's like, you know, if you're like a air quotes, like normal kid going to see Turnstile and you walk in and Ceremony's playing, you're like, how do you not get more interested in what is happening?
Yo, let's make this quick. Rockabilly.com. Awesome place to buy all of your merch, officially licensed from bands. Use this promo code 100 words or less. That's the number 100 words or less. 10% off your entire order. You want a Black Sabbath shirt? Done. How about a Grateful Dead shirt? Done. How about a Marilyn Manson hoodie? Done. How about a Bring Me the Horizon long sleeve? Done. I named a bunch of random bands, but They have over 500,000 items you can purchase, ships to you directly from the Midwest here in the United States. Fast customer service in case you run into any issues, but you shouldn't because they're totally on top of it. So rockabilia.com, have fun shopping and use the promo code 100 words or less, 10% off your entire order. Let's go. Right. Your world changes in the same way that, when you and I started to attend shows, like there is that ability to interact with those opening acts and be like, oh, it's either more of the same or it's just like something is unique about this and I can't say why.
I was literally the other day telling someone about, I went to go see Good Riddance when I was like, a total fat Epitaph kid, and Show of Hands opened. It was at the showcase. And it was kind of like my first exposure to, God, was it Show of Hands or the band before Show of Hands?
Oh, no, it's probably Show of Hands because it was, they turned into Welcome to Your Life. So,
but it was like, it was like kids were stage, but I feel like it wasn't Show, whatever. But like kids were stage diving and I was just like, oh, this is cool. Like this, and I like, yeah. So yeah, like seeing something different out there can really have a big impact on you. Yeah. And I could, yeah.
The something I have thought about as well, like kind of, dovetailing, because again, like I was joking about, there's no singular answer. Like it's all of these and more. But like the fact that now that punk and hardcore has had time to permeate throughout all of culture, and all of these people, like, we're in our 40s and there are people who are obviously older than us and people who are younger than us being able to impact the world, either if they, don't go to shows anymore, but they're taking all of those things that they learned from shows and applying it towards whatever creative medium that they're, deploying. It's like that stuff just is sort of hard baked in the DNA. And so like, I do think that the ability for this to generationally have time to percolate is only helpful to be able to introduce this to a much broader audience, because people are like, oh yes, like I've at least heard of the term punk or hardcore,
Yeah. Well, I also think not that bands are really getting swallowed up by major labels yet. I think it's bound to happen, but like when we were getting into punk and hardcore, like the idea of selling out was like a real thing. I don't think anyone cares anymore.
No, you're right. No one, people are they're looking for opportunities to, what people would define as selling out 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah. And so like these bands, and bands playing bigger rooms with barricades and, big stage production, it's not like the idea of like, oh, hardcore belongs in a basement is like there is still that sect of people who's like hardcore belongs in a basement. But I mean, your average kid who's just like, I just want to go punch something, doesn't care where it's at.
Right. And what are your thoughts? I mean, especially because, you own a record store, you sell records, you have, existed putting out records and selling records many, many years ago at another record store. Like when you kind of compare and contrast certain things, like we'll use a specific band like Knock Loose, where, the similarities they have with, bands from the 90s and early 2000s, like you can draw a straight line there and they would be the first people to wave those flags as well. So like, do you place any difference on like, I guess the amount of units that you're moving now with a band like that versus like, the newest Tribunal release in the early 2000s that I know you and I were being like, dude, how many EPs of Azazel did we sell? Like, this is crazy. Like, do you find a difference there, or is it kind of like more of the same?
The difference is that everyone is buying a Knocked Loose record, like the people we've sold Knocked Loose records to are like emo kids, hardcore kids, metal kids, normal kids, normal.
Yeah. Civilians.
Like, yeah. Like, but like if you're coming to buy an Azazel record, like you're not listening to K-Rock or the radio, but like Knocked Loose has fans that are just like music and they like heavy music. They're the same people like that have bought like Limp Bizkit records. You know what I mean? Like, But
yeah, like you're not part of a. I hear what you're saying, where it's like you're not part of a scene, like you're not so identified towards this, like, you know, you're a hardcore punk kid. It's just you're like, I just like music.
And like using Azazel, like to buy an Azazel record, like you're like in the know. Like we sold a crap load of them, but it was to like the same group. Whereas a band like Knocked Loose, Turnstile, like Scowl, like everyone's buying them.
Right. You have to, it's like that idea. You have to know what you're looking for. Like you are, you know, shooting fish in a pretty small barrel of what you're talking about with, you know, using Tribunal as another example of being like, everybody is going to, 20 people that are paying attention to the label are going to come into the record store that we worked at, shout out Bionic Records, to buy those records. But it's the same 20 people, as opposed to now that pool is much, much larger and it's a much broader cross section.
Azazel wasn't selling out 6,000 cap room in LA, 3,000 in Boston. And yeah.
Yes, that is very, I mean, who knows? I mean, they could reunite and all of a sudden, but yeah, no.
I think I saw them with, they played the Prayer for Cleansing Undying show a couple years ago.
There you go.
I don't anticipate them doing that well.
Yes.
No shots.
Right. No shots. North Carolina metalcore at its finest. Hey, friend, listen. Merch is important. Buying stuff from independent companies is important. And that is why I love working with evilgreed.net. They ship merch from Berlin, Germany with a very specific point of view. Like they don't open the floodgates to every band all over the world. They focus on cool, artistic, heavy stuff. And trust me, if you listen to the show, you will absolutely love the type of bands they work with, whether it's Nails, 200 Stab Wounds, Blood Incantation, or whether it's like the more core side of things with Triple B or Flat Spot Records. Trust me in saying that you will find probably bare minimum like 100 items that you're going to want. Vinyl, sweatshirts, long sleeves, all that stuff. evilgreed.net. It ships from Berlin, Germany, but the exchange rate is very advantageous for us right now here in America. So there's no reason you can't shop till you drop. Go to evilgreed.net and enjoy the awesomeness that is there. What do you, I'm sure that you pay attention to just as much as many other music nerds like you and myself, like Spotify play counts, where it's like you're looking, or not even play counts, but just like how many followers they have. Because I mean, I know that in the touring community, in the same way that people paid attention to, who was in your top 8 in MySpace or whatever, like there's so much equity and value placed in those follower accounts where it's like, and especially when you compare and contrast, where it's like, I know I looked up the other day where it was like, okay, again, Knocked Loose, it's like 2.3 million versus like, a band that is just as hot, but, arguably much less quote unquote popular based on these, follower accounts of being like, oh yeah, well, Speed is, they're on the tip of everyone's tongue, but, they only have a couple 100,000 followers or whatever. Do you pay attention to that as well? And do you think that has something to do with perception of the bands?
I think it definitely has to do with perception. I definitely look at all that stuff, but I also, having run a record label, know that those numbers mean nothing. They mean something. Like if you see 2 million, you're like, oh my God, but like how many of those songs are on playlists and getting played at someone's work just on shuffle? You know what I mean? Like we've had bands on the label who were like, we have 300,000 monthly listeners, but like no one comes to our shows. And it's like, you have one song on a playlist that it doesn't translate to fans. But it is a great like thing to put on we're trying to get this tour. It's like, we've got 200,000 monthly listeners.
Right.
Well, it doesn't mean you have 200,000 fans. It's like a weird, like, when it's like, oh, they have this many followers on the internet, but they're getting like, 20 likes a post. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything then. So yeah, like I definitely pay attention to the monthly listeners, but I also know that it doesn't always translate to true fans.
Right. It's like the notion of I have to give this a haircut because I know that not all of these people are actually engaged. Like, yes, will they get the notification that a new piece of music comes out? Yes. Yeah. But are they actually engaged with that next step of seeing a band live, buying a shirt or whatever.
We get like emails, like label wise for like band being like, there's this many monthly listeners and then this many followers and then this many or what, I don't know what they call them, like super listeners. And it's like, those are the people you want to target, or like, those are the people who are truly fans of the band, as opposed to the listeners who just, like I said, put it on a playlist, hit shuffle, and, you know, may not track who that was, but it, you know, they're still going to add to the monthly listener count. But I do think big picture, someone looks at that, sees 2 million monthly listeners for Knocked Loose, is like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Right.
And it's no, you know, yeah. I mean, that is
yeah. And it's also perception too. Like this dovetails into another subject, or I mean, similar topic of just the idea of the perception, where it's like, you know, using the Have Heart show that I know you attended at the Palladium outside in the parking lot, where, you know, what was it, 8,000 kids, 10,000? I can't remember what was the number.
There was like 9,000 tickets sold,
which arguably is like the largest sort of individual hardcore show that's probably ever existed up until this point. And so, like, do you place the perception of like, oh, okay, because people saw this thing being so big that it becomes that sort of, you know, snowball rolling down the hill of accumulating other people, because they're like, wait, like, I saw this picture, it's so crazy, I need to, you know, be a part of this in whatever capacity it may be. Do you think that there's something that's attached to that as well?
For sure. Like how I don't know how you could see that and not at least be curious. Like, it was, I mean, that day was one of like the craziest experiences of going to shows in my entire life. Like, almost 10,000 people. And like, I think that's the thing that makes hardcore so special and interesting. It's like, there were 10,000 people there and it felt like a hardcore show. You know, a couple months later, I went and saw, it was like Rancid and Pennywise at the same venue, and there was like 4,000 people there, and it felt like a concert. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Just like, and I think people seeing these videos of this Half Heart show where there's so many people, I mean, granted, there was no barricade, but like, it's such a different experience than like a big punk show or a big rock show, that there's no way to see that and be like, yeah, at the very least, your interest is going to be piqued.
Right. There's something that I find interesting too, like the longevity of certain bands, where it's like, I mean, Have Heart is an example of obviously a band that broke up. Their, you know, mystique and myth lived on far longer than, you know, what the band did when they were actively touring. But I look at certain, like, a band that continually amazes me in regards to their increasing popularity. There's two examples I'll actually use. One of them, like Kubla Khan, where, you know, they were just grinding it out, doing some tours. And then all of a sudden, when I say all of a sudden, it's like, you know, fast forward 12 years later, now they're, you know, selling out venues that are, you know, 2,000, 3,000 cap rooms. And it's like, wow. And they're not clearly reinventing the wheel. Like, they're not doing anything necessarily earth shattering, but now they're as popular as they ever have been. And then alternatively, a band like Silverstein that's existed for twice as long and can be, you know, in their 10th or 11th record and still be increasing in popularity. So I realize I'm pulling two random examples for you to speak on, but like, do you think that the longevity of certain bands also kind of helps that inevitability of being like, well, eventually they will be a little bit more popular?
Yeah. And it's all about like, look at those two bands. Like, they've both worked their asses off. You know, it's like, I think a lot of bands these days are like, if there's hype behind it, it's like they play weekends, the shows are crazy, but eventually it's going to fizzle. Whereas like Silverstein has toured, I feel like, relentlessly from the beginning. And it's like, you know, that is definitely you're going to grow a fan base. You're going to like, it's going to keep, if it's not growing, then why are you still doing it? You know what I mean? Like, it's at some point, if it's failing, it's not going to work, but
sure.
And that's why, you know, a band like Scowl, like, they came out of the gate and just, they've toured a ton. Like, I think it like really says a lot. Like I don't feel like you don't see that a lot with new bands that are just like the term road dog doesn't really apply to many newer bands these days. So when I see a band just out there like grinding away, like, and it starts to click, like good for them, like putting the work,
right. Something good potentially could come out of this, whether it's your intended goal or whether it's something that's even larger than your intended goal. Because to your point, exactly, of these bands that are just kind of putting one foot in front of the other and they don't expect these opportunities. Like, yes, there's always the exciting notion of riding a wave. Like I know that you and I lived through the idea of like when everything started to happen around, Title Fight, Balance, Composure, Law Dispute, Touche, like all of our collective friend group, when that stuff started to happen, like that you're cresting, you're riding a wave, and like all those bands benefited from it. But it was only through the work that they put into it beforehand were they able to like actually, completely
like
drowning the metaphor, like get up on the surfboard.
Like those 4 bands you mentioned, like toured a ton.
Right.
And it clicked. It's like, I think that's an element that is kind of lost these days. But when you see it, like, a band like Spy tours a lot. And it's like, they just kind of sound like Oaks.
Right. Right.
People that like, they're selling out like 200, 300, 400 cap rooms. And it's like, good for them. Like if you do the work, the thing, like we always talked about the labels, like just put your head down and do the work, and if you can do that, it's not always going to pay off, but it's going to pay off more than just like, hoping for the best.
Sure.
So
being super selective. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Like, and at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, like you toured the country a few times, you had fun with your friends, like,
right. You're collecting these experiences. Yeah. That's definitely something you can look back on and have fun and be proud of. Be like, yeah, I did that. I accomplished it. Put out a record. So be it.
Yeah.
Do you, the last thing I want to hit on was the idea of the, I guess, diverse, sort of mixtape generation where people, obviously the moment that everybody had the entire recorded history of music in their pockets, that gave the ability for everybody to listen to everything at any particular time. Do you think that the lack of being, so self-identified with one particular scene, it's like, yes, you can listen to a bunch of different things. Like, do you notice that, I guess, kind of helping hardcore reach more people?
Yeah. It's funny. It's like we were listening, someone put out a playlist on the store on Spotify, and it was like Chapel Roan and Ethel Cain and stuff like that. But then on it was the Knocked Loose song with Poppy. And it's like, this was a Spotify generated playlist. And it's like, someone's listening to these like female artists, and it's like, then all of a sudden Knocked Loose is on there with Poppy, who, at one point was more of a pop artist than what she does now. And it's like, that's definitely going to open someone's eyes. And then I think like being able to make, like you said, a mixtape, but in your pocket that you can send to everyone and make it available for like, if someone searches Scowl, and then it's like a playlist with a bunch of bands that, either sound nothing like Scowl or sound a lot like, it's like everything is available to everyone.
Right. And it doesn't have to be so coded in the tribalism that exists within the context of the scenes that were so disparate prior to the internet being what it is now. It's like, the only reason you found out about stuff is because friends passed it to you, or you just randomly tripped across it in like a magazine or a zine or whatever. And so it's like, now you can kind of drink in every piece of culture and be like, oh yes, like, do I look like a 90s hip hop kid, and do I listen to, Speed or whatever, and then also Post Malone? It's like, yeah, it all exists in the same stew.
Well, and then it's like, Post Malone posting pictures with all these bands. It's like,
exactly.
But, and like, I think, social media obviously plays a huge part, but, I look at Twitter, and half the things that are on my feed are things I don't follow. It's like this algorithm of, well, maybe you'll like this. And I think that's another way people will be like, oh, if you like Slipknot, you should check out, this heavy band kind of thing. Like it gets put in your face without even you knowing it.
Right. It's pulling you in a little bit of a direction where it's like, oh, okay, like I can, I can listen to this because this is, somewhat adjacent to the thing that I care about. So yeah. Totally. Well, we're not going to solve this question, but I think hopefully that will point people in, the direction of thinking about this, because ultimately it's just exciting to watch this thing grow to where who knows what the ceiling is now. We thought we did, but now we don't.
I still think back to Sound and Fury 2012 when it sold out and we did 1,200 tickets and we were just like, unbelievable. I can't believe it.
Anyway, that was our apex. It's like, what?
1,200 tickets. This will never happen again. It's like Sound and Fury is doing 5,000 tickets.
Totally.
It's great.
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks for trying to answer this very deep, philosophical, and important question.
Always. And I will continue to think about it as I always do.
Yeah, we'll revisit this in a year and be like, oh, we were all wrong.
Yeah.
There you have it. The absolute definitive answer to why is hardcore so popular right now. Obviously, I'm joking, but hopefully that gets your mind thinking in different ways about this music scene, because I mean, as much as music is a form of entertainment, it is so much more to us who are really deeply involved in this subculture. And I think it's important to think about the way this kind of stacks up against other movements, other subcultures, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much, Joey, for pontificating with me. And next week, we are back to our regularly scheduled programming of interview-based stuff. I'm very excited to have Pedro Carrillo. Carrillo. There we go. I'm hitting the R, the rolling of the tongue. But Pedro is the guitarist for Dying Wish, and I love the band. I love how hard they work. Pedro is a very sweet dude, and we had a great conversation. So that's what I got. Next week, Pedro from Dying Wish. And until then, please be safe, everybody. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that no matter who you are, mental health challenges can affect you, and how you manage them can make all of the difference. That's why everyone should have access to mental health support that meets them where they are and helps them get through. BetterHelp provides online therapy on your schedule. It's flexible, simple to use, and more affordable than in-person therapy. Connect with a licensed therapist selected just for you. Learn more at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
Hey there, it is Ryan Seacrest with you. Do you want to make this summer unforgettable? Join me at Chumba Casino. It's this summer's hottest online destination. They are rolling out the red carpet with an amazing welcome offer just for you. So don't wait. Dive in now and play hundreds of social casino games for free. Your chance to redeem real prizes is just a spin away. Care to join me?
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now, imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.